September 7th, 1996, after a fight at the MGM Grand that night, Tupac Shakur left in high spirits. Hours later, as he was cruising down the Las Vegas Strip in a BMW, sudden gunfire turned celebration into tragedy, a tragedy that changed the course of his life forever. Here are 9 rappers instantly killed by brutal gangs. August 4th, 2020, in broad daylight, 26-year-old rapper FBG Duck was walking down Oak Street, picking out presents for his son's birthday. He wasn't in his neighborhood, but in one of the wealthiest areas of the city, where gunfire usually doesn't echo off the glass storefronts. But on that day, it did. Out of nowhere, 2 cars pulled up, men jumped out armed with rifles and pistols, and opened fire. And in a matter of seconds, Duck was lying on the sidewalk, riddled with bullets. To understand how Duck ended up there, you need to rewind to his beginnings. Born Carlton Weekly in 1993, he grew up in the south side of Chicago, in an area gripped by poverty and gang violence. Like many kids from his block, he had a choice between 2 powerful influences, music and the streets. Unfortunately, he chose both. He started rapping as a teenager, with his raw voice cutting through beats with stories about his life, his losses, and his frustrations. But the lyrics weren't just entertainment because they were tied directly to the gang wars around him. In the midst of his love for music, Duck was a member of the Flyboy Gang, also known as the Tuka Gang, affiliated with the Gangster Disciples. Their rivals? The Black Disciples, a group that has produced other famous rappers like Chief Keef, King Von, and Lil Durk. This wasn't just music beef, it was street warfare turned lyrical. Duck's most notorious track, Dead Bitches, was exactly that, a roll call of rival gang members who'd been killed. It went viral, and while fans shared it online, his enemies took it as a declaration of war. But that war followed him everywhere. He survived shootings before and knew he had a target on his back. And still, he refused to tone it down. On the day of his death, he was in the Gold Coast, a place people thought was safe. But his enemies didn't care about zip codes. The moment the shooters spotted him, they saw their chance. The ambush was brutal. Witnesses reported that 4 men jumped out of 2 vehicles and fired dozens of shots, sending bystanders scrambling. Duck tried to run, but there was nowhere to go as he was hit multiple times. A few moments later, paramedics rushed him to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, but within an hour, he was pronounced dead. The attack was so brazen, so public, it shocked even a city that had grown used to gun violence. After the incident, social media exploded with grief from fans and defiance from his allies. But there was also celebration from his rivals, mocking his death the same way he had mocked theirs. For law enforcement, the killing was more than just another gang-related shooting. It was a statement. Months later, federal authorities charged members of O-Block, a faction of the Black Disciples, with carrying out Duck's murder, and according to prosecutors, the hit was part of a larger pattern of gang violence that blurred the line between street wars and rap success. FBG Duck's death wasn't just another headline. It was Chicago's drill scene spilling into real life. A rising star was gunned down in broad daylight, right in a luxury shopping district. For his family, it was heartbreak. For the city, it became a grim reminder that fame and money don't erase old street ties.
Rapper Drakeo the Ruler was stabbed to death at a concert in Exposition Park.
December 18th, 2021, the backstage area of the Once Upon a Time in LA festival was buzzing with rappers, entourages, and industry faces. Drakeo the Ruler, fresh off his legal battles and making his long-awaited return to big stages, was moving through the crowd. But hidden among the chatter and music was something far deadlier. Men who weren't there to watch him perform, but to make sure he never performed again. Born Daryl Caldwell in 1993, Drakeo grew up in South Central LA. His story wasn't unique at first glance, as he was raised in a tough neighborhood, surrounded by gangs, and constantly navigating the invisible lines that separated one street from another. But unlike many kids who got lost in that maze, Drakeo found his voice early. He didn't sound like anyone else. His music had this laid-back, almost whispery flow, and fans loved how his lyrics painted raw, unfiltered portraits of life in LA. That uniqueness made him stand out. He was affiliated with the Stink Team, a rap crew that had its own set of rivals. His success brought fame, but it also brought enemies who didn't see Drakeo as just an artist. They saw him as part of a street war. Even his arrests over the years, especially the infamous 2017 case where he was accused of murder but was later acquitted, only deepened the sense that he wasn't just rapping about the streets, he was living them. When he walked into those festival grounds in 2021, he wasn't just Drakeo the rapper. To some, he was still Drakeo the enemy. The attack happened fast. Reports say a group of men approached him backstage. At first, it looked like a confrontation, maybe an argument, but it escalated instantly. Someone pulled a blade, and before anyone could react, Drakeo was being stabbed repeatedly in the neck. Chaos erupted around him as security rushed in. Entourages fought back, and people screamed as word spread that Drakeo was down. Paramedics tried desperately to save him as he was eventually rushed to the hospital, but the wounds were too severe, and within hours, the news broke. Drakeo the Ruler was dead at 28. After the incident, fans flooded social media with shock and anger. Fellow rappers expressed heartbreak, but also frustration. How could something like this happen at a festival with so much security? His family demanded justice. His mother even announced plans to sue, arguing the event organizers hadn't done enough to protect him. And yet, in true Los Angeles fashion, the investigation stalled. No arrests were made in the immediate aftermath. Rumors even swirled about who was behind it, whispers of rivalries and targeted attacks. But the official answers never came. Drakeo's death wasn't just another rapper gone. He had beaten the courts, beaten the system, but none of that mattered once the blade came out. He once said in an interview,
"I rap about what I see, what I live, it's real."
That realness was what made him loved. But maybe it's also what doomed him.
Well-known Chicago area rapper was killed in a drive-by shooting early this morning in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood. 31-year-old Tristan Hamilton was shot multiple times. According to the Sun-Times, he raps under the name FBG Cash.
June 10th, 2022. It was just after 5 a.m. in Chicago when a black Cadillac pulled up alongside a silver sedan on the south side. Inside that sedan was 31-year-old rapper FBG Cash, a man who had already survived years of feuds, shootings, and funerals. But this time, survival wasn't on the table. FBG Cash, born Tristan Hamilton, wasn't just another rapper from Chicago. He was part of the Flyboy Gang, a rap crew rooted deep in the city's infamous drill scene. And drill wasn't just music, it was the soundtrack to ongoing street wars. But the problem was that those words often had bloody consequences. Cash grew up in the middle of this chaos. The South Side was carved into territories controlled by rival gangs, and the rap game became an extension of those wars. His crew, FBG, stood against crews like Only the Family, led by Lil Durk. That rivalry ran deep. Decades of street violence, dozens of lives lost, and endless diss tracks fueling the fire. Before the tragic incident, Cash had been shot before, had lost close friends, including FBG Duck, who was gunned down in broad daylight in 2020, and still kept rapping. In fact, after Duck's death, Cash became one of the more visible figures keeping FBG alive. He carried himself with the bravado of someone who knew the risks, but wasn't about to back down. That defiance kept his name buzzing, but it also painted a target on his back. On that early June morning, Cash was riding with a woman near 81st and Ashland Avenue. It should have been just another quiet drive through the city. But a Cadillac rolled up, windows lowered, and gunfire erupted. Witnesses later described it as an ambush as dozens of rounds tore through the car in seconds. And by the time the shooting stopped, his car was riddled with bullets, and he had been hit multiple times. Paramedics rushed him to Advocate Christ Medical Center, but it was too late as he was pronounced dead at the hospital. The woman with him survived, but with serious injuries. The news spread instantly. Fans weren't just shocked, They were exhausted. Social media lit up with tributes, but also with taunts from rivals, the cycle repeating itself in real time. He wasn't the first FBG member to be killed, and tragically, he wouldn't be the last. For Chicago drill, death had become almost expected. Every new diss track seemed like a countdown to another shooting. After the incident, police launched an investigation, but as with many Chicago rap-related killings, answers didn't come quickly. The city's homicide clearance rates have long struggled, and when gang politics are involved, witnesses often stay silent. The W and Y behind the murder remain officially unsolved. But for those following the drill scene, the speculation pointed in only one direction: revenge. So the lingering question is this: was FBG Cash's death inevitable given the world he was part of? Or could things have been different if drill hadn't blurred the line between music and murder?
Officials confirmed one of the 3 people shot and killed was rapper King Von from Chicago, who was here last night with friends.
November 6, 2020, just outside Monaco Hookah Lounge in Atlanta, shots were fired. And within minutes, 26-year-old Chicago rapper King Von lay on the pavement, bleeding out. Just hours earlier, he had been celebrating the release of his new album. Now, he was fighting for his life. King Von, born Davon Bennett, wasn't just another name in rap. He was one of the fastest rising stars in drill music, known for his vivid storytelling and unflinching lyrics. But his rise wasn't built on pure talent alone. His songs were reflections of the life he had lived: the gang wars, the violence, the street codes of Chicago's South Side. And that life always had a way of following him, no matter how far he traveled. Back then, Von grew up in Parkway Gardens, better known as O Block, a name that became infamous in rap circles and notorious in Chicago police files. The area was controlled by the Black Disciples, and Von was deeply tied to them from a young age. His involvement wasn't light. He'd been arrested multiple times, faced serious charges, including murder, and even done stints behind bars. But when he started rapping under the mentorship of Lil Durk, he found a way to turn his experiences into music. And the music blew up. Tracks like Crazy Story showed his knack for detail, painting crime scenes so real you could almost smell the gunpowder. Fans called him one of drill's best storytellers. But the same realism that gave him credibility also kept him tied to the very violence he was trying to escape. By the fall of 2020, Von was bigger than ever. His album Welcome to O Block had just dropped, and he was in Atlanta to celebrate. But while Atlanta wasn't Chicago, it wasn't exactly neutral ground, as drill rivalries didn't stop at city limits. That night outside Monaco Lounge, those rivalries exploded. Reports say Von got into a heated argument with members of rapper Quando Rondo's crew, and what started as words turned physical. Surveillance footage later showed fists flying, a crowd forming, and then, suddenly, gunshots. Von was struck multiple times. His bodyguards and off-duty police officers at the scene returned fire, and the parking lot turned into a war zone. In the chaos, Timothy Leaks, better known as Lil Tim, a close associate of Quando Rondo, was identified as the shooter. He was later arrested and charged with Von's murder. But by then, the damage was done. Von was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't make it. At just 26 years old, his career was cut short before it had truly peaked. Then what followed next was explosive. Fans mourned, but the streets rumbled with the possibility of revenge. Von's death wasn't just another tragedy. It was a spark in an already dangerous feud between OTF, Von's camp, and rivals tied to Rondo and NBA Youngboy. Diss tracks, online taunts, and violent threats poured in, keeping tensions boiling long after that night in Atlanta. For Chicago, Von's murder felt like deja vu. Another young star, gone too soon, and another rapper who couldn't outrun the life he came from. And yet, his music only grew more powerful after his death. His stories, once seen as entertainment, now read like grim foreshadowing. King Von had always rapped about the risks, about the inevitability of either prison or death. But fans hoped he'd be the one to break the cycle. to prove that drill rappers could rise above their past. But instead, his death cemented the cycle as brutally unbreakable. So people ask, was King Von's murder simply the cost of authenticity in drill? Or was it proof that in this world, success only makes you a bigger target?
Security camera video just obtained by CNN shows the suspect walking up to Hussle and two other men as they stood outside the rapper's store.
March 31st, 2019, Nipsey Hussle stood outside his own store, the Marathon Clothing, chatting casually with friends and fans. No big security detail, and no Hollywood distance. Just Nipsey in his neighborhood. But what he didn't know was that a simple conversation would turn into a deadly confrontation, one that would shock the entire rap world. Before his fame, Nipsey was Ermias Asghedom. Born and raised in Crenshaw, he was pulled into the streets early, joining the Rollin 60s Crips as a teenager. That decision shaped his life for better and worse. He sold mixtapes from the trunk of his car, hustling not just for money but for respect. People on his block knew him before the rest of the world did, and even as his fame grew, he didn't run from his past. He stayed rooted in it. Nipsey wasn't just a rapper. He was an entrepreneur, a community builder, and someone who wanted to prove that success didn't mean abandoning the place you came from. His ties to the streets never fully disappeared. Old beefs, neighborhood politics, and the dangerous mix of pride and reputation followed him. On that March afternoon, Nipsey reportedly had a tense exchange with a man named Eric Holder, someone from the same neighborhood, someone also tied to the life Nipsey had once lived. Then the conversation escalated, words were exchanged, and Holder left. Minutes later, he returned with a gun. The shots came fast. Nipsey was hit multiple times, collapsing in front of his store. His friends scrambled, people screamed, and chaos broke out. A rapper who had survived the streets lay bleeding on the concrete in broad daylight. He was eventually rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. News of his death spread instantly. The streets of Los Angeles were filled with vigils, murals, and marches. In Crenshaw, thousands gathered to honor him. To them, Nipsey wasn't just a rapper. He was proof that someone from their block could build an empire and still give back. His funeral was held at the Staples Center, with thousands in attendance, a send-off usually reserved for legends. Former President Barack Obama even wrote a letter praising Nipsey's commitment to community. And for a brief moment, it seemed like his death united Los Angeles in mourning and reflection. But beneath the grief, the questions lingered. Nipsey's murder wasn't random, it was personal. Eric Holder was arrested within days, accused of gunning him down over what prosecutors later described as a petty dispute, allegedly about snitching and respect. Today, Nipsey's store stands as both a landmark and a reminder that his music lives on. He had the money, the fame, and the recognition, but he stayed close to his roots, believing he could change the system from within. On November 17, 2021, inside Makeda's homemade butter cookies, something unexpected happened that made customers freeze. Workers ducked behind counters as gunfire ripped through the storefront. Moments later, the man lying on the floor wasn't just any customer. Adolph Thornton Jr., known to the world as Young Dolph, wasn't supposed to go down like that. He had built a reputation as the independent king of Memphis rap, the one who refused to bow to big labels, who hustled his way from the streets to millionaire status on his own terms. But the streets that made him never really let go of him. Dolph's story began in Chicago, though Memphis became his true home when his family moved there while he was still a toddler. Castalia Heights was where he grew up, rough, poor, and dangerous. He didn't sugarcoat it as his lyrics told stories of hustling, struggling, and survival. Fans loved him because he didn't fake it and because what he rapped about was real. As his career grew, so did his problems. Dolph's independence and sharp tongue earned him respect, but also enemies. His long-running feud with Memphis rapper Yo Gotti became infamous, even leading authorities to label their camps as rival gangs, By 2017, that tension nearly killed him, as he was shot multiple times outside a shoe store in Los Angeles. Yes, he survived, but it wasn't luck, it was resilience. He even mocked his shooters in music, naming a project Bulletproof. And that was Dolph's way of fighting back. Despite close calls, he kept pushing. By the 2020s, Dolph wasn't just a rapper. He was a figure in his community. Every year, he gave out turkeys to Memphis families for Thanksgiving, donated to schools, covered rent for those who couldn't pay, and always came back to his roots. He was living proof that you could come out of the struggle and give back. That made his murder outside a neighborhood cookie shop even harder to accept. The day he died, it wasn't some secret back alley setup. It was broad daylight. Dolph walked into Makita's, a place he often visited, with no big entourage and no armor around him. Then 2 masked gunmen pulled up, opened fire, and left him lifeless in an attack he never saw coming. The city erupted. Crowds gathered outside Makita's, staring at the bullet holes, crying, cursing, and demanding justice. Police wasted no time. Surveillance footage showed the killers in hoodies and masks, carrying rifles. Soon after, names emerged. Justin Johnson, a local rapper who went by Straight Drop, and Cornelius Smith were charged with Dolph's murder, while others were later tied to the case. Motives swirled between gang ties, jealousy, and retaliation. But the deeper truth was simple. Success and survival don't always coexist in the rap world. The courtroom saga drags on, with Dolph's family and fans still waiting for closure. Meanwhile, Makita's, the little cookie shop where it all happened, stands as a haunting landmark in Memphis. Some still stop by to pay respects, laying flowers where Dolph took his last breath. Young Dolph set out to show you could stay independent, stay authentic, and never forget where you came from. And he actually lived that. But in the end, the same place that built him up was also the one that took him down. June 1st, 2023, shots shattered the calm outside a Bayamon shopping center. Inside a black Infiniti, rapper Pacho El Antifeka slumped lifeless, riddled with bullets. But was this just street violence, or the silencing of deeper secrets? Before that, Pacho wasn't just another name in Puerto Rico's reggaeton and trap scene. Born Neftali Alvarez Nunez, he had carved out his place in the Latin urban world, collaborating with major artists and steadily building his reputation. To fans, he was a talented musician with a unique voice. But behind the music, his life was tangled in the darker currents of the island's street politics and rivalries. Puerto Rico's urban music scene has always been closely tied to the realities of the streets. For many rappers, credibility comes from lived experiences, struggles, hustles, and connections that shaped their lyrics. And Pacho wasn't an exception. His music often touched on life's harsh edges, giving him respect among fans who saw him as real, not manufactured. But that authenticity also kept him close to danger. In June, the danger finally caught up with him. Pacho had gone to the shopping center like anyone else, but unknown to him, gunmen were already waiting. They ambushed him in the early morning hours, firing relentlessly, ensuring there would be no chance of survival. Witnesses described the scene as pure chaos with dozens of shots, people running for cover, and the stark image of a rapper's life ending violently in the front seat of his car. Authorities later confirmed what many suspected. This wasn't random. It bore all the marks of a planned hit. Puerto Rico has struggled for years with organized crime, gang rivalries, and drug trade violence spilling into everyday life. And for a figure like Pacho, becoming a target wasn't far-fetched. The news of his death spread quickly. Fans flooded social media with shock and heartbreak. Fellow artists expressed grief, but also frustration at a cycle they'd seen too many times before. Talented voices silenced before reaching their full potential. Puerto Rico's music industry had lost a rising star, but the streets had lost something else. Another life in a war that feels endless. After the tragedy, investigations dragged on, but like many killings tied to organized crime in Puerto Rico, answers remained elusive. Was Pacho killed over old grudges? Was it connected to rivalries in the music industry itself, where lyrics sometimes cut deeper than intended? Or was he simply caught in a conflict much bigger than him? For fans, Pacho El Antifeka will be remembered for his music, his grit, and his promise.
Breaking story. We're outside of Peterson's Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, where the 24-year-old rap artist known as Notorious B.I.G, Christopher Wallace, was shot early Sunday morning and later died of gunshot wounds at nearby Cedars-Sinai Medical Center.
On March 9, 1997, Christopher Wallace sat in a GMC Suburban just outside the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles after a music industry party. Then, a black Chevy Suburban rolled up, slid the window down, and within seconds, gunfire shattered through the GMC, ending his life instantly. But to understand that night, you have to rewind. As we once knew him, Biggie wasn't just a rapper. He was the face of the East Coast rap scene in the 1990s. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Wallace rose from hustling on street corners to becoming one of the most gifted storytellers in music. His debut album, Ready to Die, didn't just sell records. It defined an era. But with fame came enemies, and the rap world was already divided by one of the most dangerous rivalries it had ever seen. The East Coast-West Coast feud wasn't just lyrics and interviews, it was personal, and it was deadly. On one side, Biggie and Sean P. Diddy Combs represented Bad Boy Records in New York. On the other hand, Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight led the charge for Death Row Records in Los Angeles. Diss tracks turned into real-life threats. Words turned into violence, and the media just fanned the flames, painting it like a war between coasts. On the night of Wallace's murder, he was in Los Angeles for a Vibe magazine after-party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Security was heavy, the crowd was buzzing, and the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Just past midnight, he left the party with his entourage. He climbed into the front passenger seat of a green GMC Suburban. As he pulled away, the street seemed calm, until a black Chevy Impala rolled up beside, and without warning, the shooter leaned out and fired multiple rounds straight into the Suburban. 4 bullets struck Wallace, after which his team sped him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but it was too late. At 1:15 a.m., doctors pronounced him dead. The news of the incident sent shockwaves around the world. The rap community was in disbelief. One of its biggest stars, the Notorious B.I.G, was gunned down. Fans mourned in the streets. Brooklyn lit up with tributes, murals, and memorials. His second album, Life After Death, which was released just weeks later, only cemented his legacy. At the end of the day, Biggie's story isn't just about a legend who shaped hip-hop. It's about a murder that still haunts music. Decades later, the world's still asking the same question: who really killed Biggie?
Tupac Shakur was on top of the hip-hop world back in 1996 when he was shot and killed in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting. Shakur's death at the age of 25 remained a mystery for decades.
September 7th, 1996, on Las Vegas Boulevard, outside the MGM Grand, a fight had just spilled into the lobby, with Tupac Shakur, one of the biggest rappers alive, right in the middle of it. Hours later, as he rode down the strip in a BMW, gunfire erupted, marking a change in the course of his life for the worse. But mind you, his story didn't end there. Tupac Amaru Shakur wasn't just a rapper like most of us know him. He was a voice. Born in New York, raised in Baltimore, and later California, Tupac's music carried raw emotion, politics, and street reality. Tracks like Keep Ya Head Up and Changes showed his sensitivity, while Hit 'Em Up revealed his rage. He was a paradox, activist and outlaw, poet and gang affiliate, loved by millions, but surrounded by enemies. By the mid-1990s, he was at the center of a war that hip-hop couldn't contain. The East Coast-West Coast feud pitted Tupac and Death Row Records against Biggie Smalls and Bad Boy Records. Diss tracks were flying, tensions were boiling, and Tupac, ever outspoken, fueled it with his words. He accused Biggie of betrayal, claimed Bad Boy set him up in a 1994 shooting in New York, and used his music as a weapon. But outside of rap battles, there was another dangerous alliance at play. Tupac had tied himself to Death Row CEO Suge Knight, and the violent orbit that surrounded him. With gang connections running deep, Crips, Bloods, and more, the lines between rap and street warfare blurred until they were impossible to separate. On that September night, Tupac attended the Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon fight at the MGM Grand. After Tyson's quick victory, Tupac, Suge, and their entourage walked through the casino lobby. That's where they ran into Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips. Security cameras captured Tupac throwing the first punch, after which a brawl broke out with fists flying and hotel security rushing in to break it up. The fight ended quickly, but it lit a fuse. Later that night, Tupac and Suga were driving down the Las Vegas Strip in a black BMW. At a red light, a white Cadillac pulled up beside them and, without warning, gunfire shattered. Dozens of rounds tore into the car, and Tupac was hit multiple times in the chest, arm, and thigh. Suge was grazed, but he survived. After the tragic incident, chaos followed. Shakur was rushed to University Medical Center, where he clung to life for 6 days. Fans gathered outside, praying for recovery. Reporters camped out and rumors swirled. Some said he'd pull through, others whispered he was already gone. But on September 13, 1996, at just 25 years old, Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. In the events following his death, conspiracy theories spread instantly. Some blamed the Crips, others pointed to East Coast rivals, while a few even accused Suge Knight himself of betrayal. Fans refused to accept it, and to this day, there are still those who believe Tupac faked his death and disappeared. But here's what makes the story haunting. Tupac knew he was living on borrowed time. In interviews, he often said he didn't expect to live long. His lyrics read like premonitions, warnings from a man staring death in the face. And when it came, it wasn't surprising, it was inevitable.